Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Perry Leo. I'm going to be chairing this the Senate meeting for the first 15 minutes until President Cunningham shows up. So I now call the University Senate to order. So just a brief word at the beginning. Since today's agenda is extremely full, we're going to be sticking closely to the stated time limits on each item. To facilitate this, at the beginning of each agenda item, we will put the ending time on the chat. Then when we are on the last question or comment, we will announce it, and Senate staff will lower any remaining hands. Finally, we will utilize a countdown clock within Zoom to monitor each speaker's time. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. All right, item 2 is a list of recent faculty, staff, and student deaths that have been sent for announcement to the Senate. I invite you to observe a moment of silence while I read the names. Leslie Bautista, Monica McKay, Rosalie Olseth, Rebecca Webb, and Manuel Castillo. Great. Item 3 concerns administrative responses to Senate actions and is presented for information. Item 4 is approval of minutes from the University Senate meeting on April 3rd, 2025. Amber, please initiate the poll. Are people hearing me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. It's just Amber that can't hear me. Sorry, Amber.
Oh no, I can hear you. I just am slow right now.
Thanks, Amber.
10 more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 114 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Great. Item 5 concerns recent policy revisions approved by the SCC and is presented for information. Right. Item 6 is an update from our faculty legislative liaisons. Professor Blair, please go ahead.
I hope this is coming through well. Last time I presented, I had about a 30-second chance to explain what faculty legislative liaisons are, and I'll give you a 30-second explanation again. And Mark B., who is a professor in the College of Biological Sciences, and I'm in CFANS, are the faculty legislative liaisons, meaning that we are to be a connection between you and the legislators at the St. Paul Capitol. We don't do federal work. We're appointed by the president in consultation with the FCC and the Senate. We serve 3-year terms. We're ex officio on FCC, and our job is to be a conduit of information. When I was trying to explain this to legislators, I said, I know a lot of people who know a lot of things that you need to know a lot about. And that is our mission in a nutshell. But we also keep track of what's happening at the Capitol and see what we can do. A little background, the University of Minnesota gets a base budget from the state every year. And it's about $745 million in a year. Well, our entire budget for the whole university is about $1.5 billion. And this year has been pretty dicey in that we've asked for an increase in our base budget uh, to deal with core mission and healthcare and student experience and research. Governor Waltz said that he didn't want to give us any increase in our base budget. The Senate agreed with him, and so did the House. There are a few things that actually the Senate wants to decrease, which are known as state specials. And if you're thinking about, like, I don't want to call them pork, but they are specific line items for specific projects at the university that are in there usually permanently, except if it gets changed. And in this case, like the Senate decreased the state special for the Bell Museum, the Cannabis Research Center, the Center for Economic Development, the Humphrey Forum, the Geological Survey, yada, yada, yada. But they did want to increase CentraCare. Same thing happened with the House. They are right now in the process of having the two different committees, the Senate and the House, reconcile their differences, and we'll see what comes out there. Now, seeing a lot of zeros or for our base budget might be a little disheartening, but we were really afraid that we would actually be cut in our base budget this year, and a zero is actually pretty much a great thing. It could be better. It'd be great if they did increase the base budget, but at least things weren't cut. The second part of financing at the Capitol is bonding. You can think of bonding as very roughly money to build things. We need substantial funds to keep up the state-built buildings at all of our campuses. We've asked for some, and we probably will receive some bonding, but the focus at the Capitol right now is on budget, not on bonding, and we don't know what that will be, or if there will be any. So that's what's happening at the Capitol in a nutshell. I want to remind everybody that it helps if you write personal emails to the different senators and representatives, and we will tell you who to write to if you sign up at advocate.umn.edu. It's amazing that individual emails that aren't just cut and pasted is the way all the legislators keep track of if a topic is of interest to their constituents. I was always amazed when they bring up things that a constituent said. I think that's all. Are there any questions? David Fox.
Is there time for questions?
I don't
Not
know.
really, but it's
Okay,
short.
never mind.
Okay.
David, you can send me an email.
All right. Thanks, Professor Blair. Item 7 is the SCC FCC Chairs Report. Professor Goodnow, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Professor Leo. This is my final report to the Senate as our Senate season draws to a close, and I want to start with a couple thank yous. First, I'd like to thank Perry Leo for all his work and support this past year as Vice Chair. I'm confident I'm leaving you in good hands. I also need to express deep appreciation to the Senate office, and particular Amber Bathke. This job as FCC SCC Chair is hard, but would be absolutely impossible without Amber. I'd also like to mention and thank Lori Cooper-Stoll, who is completing her first year as Senate Office Director. It's been welcome to have a fresh set of eyes on our Senate, even as she did listening and learning about how it's always been done. I'd also like to credit and recognize President Cunningham. I'm not quite sure she expected chairing the university and faculty senates to be part of this job, but she has stepped up to the challenge. I look forward to her continued leadership as we move ahead boldly. Thank you. Thank you to the senators for putting in the effort to participate in all things before the Senate this academic year, from the routine to the very challenging. Thank you to those who offered me grace and assumed best intentions as I navigated my year. I've enjoyed working with and on behalf of so many of you. I recognize that we are a better Senate because of how much you care about our university. Thank you. Finally, I'd like to give a warm and special thanks to Provost Croson. You joined us in March of 2020 during unprecedented times and quickly established yourself as someone willing to engage with both faculty and shared governance. I didn't do any sort of official counting, but you may have set some sort of record in Provost Hall of Fame for number of Senate meetings, Senate committee meetings, FCC, SCEP meetings, etc. attended. You were committed to making sure governance was offered a seat at the table, and you listened when we were there. From the earliest days of COVID until now, we certainly haven't always agreed. However, you would show up and explain the why behind your decisions. There's no requirement for you to be at Senate meetings, let alone to give a report and take questions, yet here you are meeting after meeting. You didn't disengage after last June, and for that, I believe you are owed our respect and appreciation. You've now got a set of bookends as you're leaving us during different unprecedented times, and I wish you well on whatever comes next. Turning now to update the business of the SCC from April 14th and the FCC, which just met an hour ago. At FCC, the consultative committee chairs shared a summary of their recent work with the larger group, and congratulations should be extended to chairs Stacy Kitten-Taiwo, as well as the whole Student Senate, PNA Senate, and Civil Service Senates on another successful year of making a difference for their constituencies. At the FCC meeting today, we voted overwhelmingly 10-2 to endorse the statements on the docket today from TFAPS, as we recognize there are real, long-standing, and concerning issues facing our term faculty and academic professionals, which these statements and recommendations seek to correct. Regarding the statement in support of the core mission and values on the University Senate agenda coming up, I received positive feedback after sharing it with the FCC on April 3rd, and that was a big part of the discussion at SCC on April 14th. This statement was written collaboratively by leaders of the Senates within the Big Ten, Senate leaders within the Big Ten. I have been part of multiple email threads, Google Docs, and Zoom calls during its development. The resolution under consideration at the special meeting later today was also discussed in some of those Big Ten emails and meetings. Of note for that, I have just learned that Rutgers will host a Zoom open forum for a follow-up discussion on the Rutgers Resolution Defense Compact, and that's on May 22nd. They are formally inviting all senators from Big Ten Senates to attend, and so watch for an email in the coming days where I'll share the details and the Zoom information from that. But you may want to mark your calendars right now for May 22nd if that's of interest. Both the SCC and FCC, along with multiple Senate committees, have been quite busy with final reviews of policies, many of which you see on the agenda today. By the time these policies arrive at the Senate, it often seems like there isn't much left to talk about, but I'd like to highlight the phased retirement policy. Through the committee-level consultation with SCAFA and FCC, faculty concerns were heard, and some of the originally proposed changes were removed. We appreciate the engagement from HR with us on this policy. FCC today also heard an update from the Presidential Task Force on AI and on undergraduate enrollment, and we visited with President Cunningham. As both information and a reminder, the Senate office does not provide details of individual senator votes unless voting results are formally requested through a Minnesota Data Practices Act request. There was a DPA request made for the voting information on the April 3rd core curriculum vote, and the Senate office complied with the request from the Office of General Counsel. For Senate work, Zoom polls are not and cannot be anonymous. With that, I thank you, and I turn it back over to you, Professor Leo.
Thank you. I'll now turn it over to President Cunningham to chair the rest of the meeting. Your mute is on. Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a long week by Thursday here. So let's see. Thank you for chairing the front part of the meeting, Perry, as well as Professor Goodnow for your kind remarks for both my service as well as for Provost Croson. So item 8 is discussion and action on the statement in support. Am I right here on item 8? Yes. Is just to jump in here is discussion and action on a statement in support of the core mission and values of higher education. Professor Goodnow, would you like to introduce the topic?
Thank you, President Cunningham. Just a couple quick notes. As I mentioned, this document was drafted collaboratively with many other Big Ten Senate leaders, with the Faculty Senate Chair from the University of Washington taking the lead. Our goal was to create some statement of high level and abstract commitment that was broadly representative of what those of us in higher education feel is the value of our mission and our shared values. This document does not belong to me in particular or this Senate or any individual Senate within the Big Ten. It belongs to the group of leaders who drafted it, and this is the agreed upon lockdown version. And so the vote here is an up and down endorsement vote. No senates are opening it up for amendments or anything like that. And that's my understanding of how the other Big Tens are handling it. Based on the unofficial Google spreadsheet tracker that we've been using, all of the other Big Ten senates have either approved this already or they're planning a vote on it sometime in the next week or two. There is one Senate who hasn't reported back yet. If approved, our Senate would be added to the document as having approved the document. It's also likely that the sentiment of this statement isn't unique to Big Ten schools. In the near future, other university senates might be provided an opportunity to join in signing on as well. However, no individual signatures will be sought. And with that, I turn it back over to you, President Cunningham.
We will now proceed to debate. Please raise your hand to be recognized to speak and send a chat to Amber Bathi indicating whether or not your comment is pro or con. When you are called on, please introduce yourself and indicate which unit you represent.
Okay.
As a reminder, non-senators must be yielded time by a senator in order to speak. Amber, are you calling on people here?
Yep, I wasn't sure if you're done. First up is Elizabeth Wrigleyfield.
Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you. I am an alternate for a senator in CLA. I'm in sociology, and I want to speak in favor of endorsing this statement, which I think goes hand in hand with the Mutual Defense Compact, and I hope that we'll pass together. So there are 2 points that I wanted to make about it. One is that it seems to me that one of the defining features of the current federal government's approach to all of its initiatives is the divide and conquer dynamics that really maximize everyone's fear, right? So like because Trump's method is singling out particular institutions instead of operating through clear rules, everybody's afraid all the time of being targeted for retaliation, and that makes all of us end up making concessions that we don't necessarily need to make. So everyone I know who relies on federal funding is grappling with some form of this dilemma in our research labs or our centers. And that's why I think it is so important for us to prioritize standing with other universities. I love that other Big Ten schools have already passed this and are asking for other schools to do the same, and I really want us to support them. And the other point is that I think one of the most important things we can do right now is articulate the value of our work to public audiences. And I don't think this statement so much does that directly because it won't necessarily reach people directly, but I do think it gives us a foundation of this is what we want to defend. And I would really like to see us much more actively expanding on these points in op-eds and radio shows and presentations to churches and neighborhood groups, or like other more creative ways of reaching the public, which I know people are already doing, but much more concertedly to defend research, free speech, and civil rights in education. I think it's a great list of values. So I really see these 2 motions, this and the Mutual Defense Compact, as sort of giving us a shared foundation for that work. I think it's really important. And I want to just express a lot of appreciation for the people who put work into drafting this statement and have brought it forward.
Next up is Kat Hayes.
Thank you. Kat Hayes, I'm a faculty senator in CLA. And echoing Elizabeth, I'd like to speak in support of this statement in large part because of its complementarity with the resolution, which is the subject of our special session a little bit later in this meeting, later in the afternoon. Both the statement and the resolution index a pre-existing coalition, the Big Ten Academic Alliance, establishing a shared set of values and missions which are in need of defense in the current moment. The statement on its own is uncontroversial. I think we can agree, we can all see our work and our aims and our impact in it. It also indicates what is at risk due to the threats to funding, to our international scholars and students, and to our academic freedom. The statement therefore sets the stage for collective action in defense of these values and missions. This is the specific focus of the resolution, which is presented later, the call to act through the collective body of the Big Ten Academic Alliance. So I would encourage my fellow senators to view the two items in the mode of both and. We must both publicly and collectively restate our values and goals, and we must move to a plan of action for our defense by approving both of these. Thank you.
Currently, no one else in the queue.
We will now proceed to a vote. Amber, please initiate the poll. Unless,
Oh, I was just, if I may, since we do have time, I was going to address something that was really a great insight by Professor Wrigley Field about that this isn't designed to go to the public. That was absolutely debated hotly within the Google Doc and Google Chat of who is the target audience for this. And we decided as a group to keep it more academic, more towards senators, and people within academia. But you're right, it's a foundation that we can take out to the public. But we did make a distinct decision that it wasn't written for a public audience. And so I think you wisely picked up on that, but I wanted to note we did consider that.
thank you for that, Professor Goodnow. Now, I will now proceed to a vote. Amber, if you want to initiate that poll.
Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 149 ayes and 1 nay, that motion carries.
Thank you. So with that, item 9 is introductions to the Senate. With that, I would like to begin to introduce Greg Sneed as the Associate Vice President of Provost, for Strategic Enrollment Management since August of 2024, joining us from the Denison University in Ohio. He serves as the Chief Enrollment Officer for the Twin Cities campus. Welcome, Vice Provost Sneed, and please feel free to make a few brief remarks or two if you would like.
Thank you very much, President Cunningham. Thank you, Senators. Just wanted to say I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you very much. It's been a fascinating 9 months getting to know folks, and I look forward to working with everyone.
Thank you, Vice Provost Sneed. Moving next to Dean McEverin is the Dean of the Law School. He began on as an interim basis in July of 2023 before moving to his current role last June. He's been a member of our law school faculty since 2006. Welcome, and please feel free to make some brief remarks if you'd like. Perhaps he's not with us today. Okay, well, welcome anyway. Moving next, Jorshan Alves is Dean of the College of Liberal Arts on the Twin Cities campus, which he began in November of 2024. He joined the university after serving as Associate Dean of the University of Maryland. Welcome, Jorshan. Please feel free to make some brief remarks.
Thank you, Professor Cunningham. It's a pleasure to be here. I see many of my own faculty in this space and some having spoken very recently. I really always appreciate the work that in shared governance and the work that Senates do. So it's kind of a pleasure to kind of be here for a minute of it, but thank you so much for the welcome.
Thank you all so much for your leadership. Item 10 is action on revisions to administrative policy, research misconduct. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Amber, please initiate the poll.
Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 135 ayes and 0 nays, that motion carries.
Item 11 is an update on workforce reinvestment resolution work groups. Professor Goodnow will introduce this topic.
Thank you, President Cunningham. Depending on how you feel about the pace of academia, you may or may not be surprised to learn that we're quite close to the 2-year anniversary of the passing of the Workforce Reinvestment Resolution, which was unanimously passed by the University Senate. More importantly, the work has continued, and we invited those charged with that work to provide an update on their progress. So with that, I will turn it over to Ken Horstman, Vice President for the Office of Human Resources, to get that started. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Goodnow and President Cunningham. We have been working very hard this academic year to respond to the resolution and to carry forward some of the initial recommendations made under Interim President Ettinger. And that has involved a collaborative effort with shared governance. I will be accompanied in this conversation with Senior Director Mary Roman Kuhl from the Office of Human Resources, Vice Provost Beth Lewis from the Faculty and Academic Affairs Office, and Lovie Peisig, Leadership Development Manager in the Office of Human Resources. Together, those three have chaired 4 work groups consisting of shared governance members representing the various employee and faculty groups, as well as subject matter expertise from the administrative and academic side to develop these recommendations. And we have a very brief time today to talk about a great deal of this work. So I will be turning it over shortly to the first speaker. What I did want to say is we feel very confident about the recommendations made. It is not all inclusive. There is work beyond these recommendations that we recognize can be done. And we also recognize the current environment of the last 3 months. While these are preliminary recommendations, there are obviously things occurring in our environment outside the university and within that can impact budget decisions, which can impact the timeline or a decision to move forward with these recommendations. And so that we will not be addressing today. The idea behind these recommendations is that they will go to the executive sponsors of the governance committee that the president has established. Those sponsors are the provost, EVP Greg Goldman, and myself. Together, we will review these and make a recommendation to the president for review and approval. So that process will play out as we go through the rest of the semester, the academic year. With that, I will turn it over to Mary Roman Kuhl, who will have 10 minutes to cover our first 2 work groups, that is compensation and also the benefits work group. She'll be followed by Vice Provost Lewis, who will cover the faculty success work group, and Lovie will finish up with the staff success work group. So Mary, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. We're happy to be here today. I've been chairing the compensation work group, and the team started out with a list of requests that were originally recommended by the workforce reinvestment group. And then we had a couple of regulatory items and new requests that had surfaced since the time that report was written. So we had our whole list of the items along with proposed costs associated with those. And we sorted those items into 3 categories: required, so an item that was required, priority 1 topics, and then priority 2. So this is how the group prioritized the needs that were on that list. First, we had 1 required item that we said this would be if we have money available, this would get the first amount of money. And that's that we need to increase our postdoc associate salary floor from $56,000 to $61,000. That's in progress. We match up to NERSA's recommended number every year. So that's in progress already. But then we get into the priority 1 items, and this is what the group selected as priority 1. They feel that we should increase salary floors for teaching specialists and lecturers, for those paid at a base salary, but then also implement a minimum per credit hour payment for those paid per credit. And we know that's a very important topic to all of you on this Zoom. It was important to us too. The second priority 1 item is that we continue to increase civil service and P&A salaries above the lowest union scale rate. We had done that the first year where the resolution came through, and we want to keep doing that. So that's our other first priority item. Our priority 2 items, so this would be the next things we would take on if there's remaining money. We really want to reserve anywhere from 0.25% to 1% of salaries for market adjustment funds for FY26, beyond what's planned for the merit increase pool. Ideally, the next 3 items would be funded in addition to that market adjustment fund. But if we don't have money to do that, then we would say, when you go to dole out those market adjustment funds, please keep these 3 priorities kind of highest consideration when you're spending that money. So the first is to bring P&A researchers at researcher level 5, 6, and 7 to at least 61,000, which is that new postdoc salary floor. Second is to bring faculty to at least 61,000, again, to keep them at least on pace with that new postdoc salary floor. And then increase civil service salaries for civil service supervisors that are paid less than their direct reports. So those would be our priority 2 items. We're hoping we're able to fund all of those if possible. And then there were some educational and design items our group was asked to look at. So we're going to be doing this in the next couple of months until the team disbands at the end of June. And that's to revisit how annual pay increase programs are awarded and then implement any changes we would recommend in FY27. We want to also implement remaining employee and faculty market refinements. So education and Crookston faculty would go in place in FY25. Crookston will actually be wrapped up next week. Administration and Morris faculty and a few colleges on the Twin Cities campus, we'd like to do those market refinements in FY26. And then develop supervisory education regarding pay principles, strategies, and range placement for FY26. So that's the end of the summary for the comp work group. And then I'll just move into the benefits work group. I've also been chairing this work group. So the preliminary recommendations is that we would like to identify the costs and opportunities of 2 of the most significant benefit kind of items, investments that we could be making right now. The first is perform benchmarking to determine what the prevalence is of the Regents tuition benefit for dependents. And then once we know kind of what the prevalence of that program is, then we perform a cost benefit analysis of providing the Regents tuition benefit for dependents, and then bring that to the executive sponsors and get an opinion on whether or not to be considering that for the university. We also want to determine how to fund the Minnesota Paid Family Medical Leave regulatory change that's coming for 1/1/26 and the implication that that has for other benefit enhancements or reductions based on how that gets funded. Our second recommendation is to research ways to implement the following benefit topics in a no or low cost manner. We would like to identify adjustments to civil service vacation accruals to be able to offer more vacation to those at the 1 through 5 years of service level. But we feel on that one, we probably need to figure out a no or low cost way to do that. We have some ideas. We're going to explore those and come back with recommendations. And then we may also want to consider implementing maybe 1 to 2 voluntary benefits that would be of value to people. If the university ends up deciding that we would be willing to move forward with more substantial changes to benefits, like the Regents tuition benefit, and employees would also be ready for that type of change, maybe considering either adding it or maybe using changes to other benefits to offset some of those offerings. We'd then like to move forward and conduct an OHR facilitated employee survey of benefits using a conjoint analysis. But first we need to do that initial work. And then I'm going to turn it over to Beth Lewis from Faculty Affairs, and she's going to provide an update on the faculty and P&A instructor success work group items.
Great, thanks, Mary. So just a couple of quick updates. We tackled 3 different big areas. There's other things that I won't have time to get into, but one of the things we were looking at was contract faculty and P&A lecturers and teaching specialists. The need for clarity of when to appoint contract faculty versus P&A lecturers and teaching specialists. There is a form that's required that, according to policy, that we've started to require again, so we can do a better job of monitoring when those are being appointed. We also want to explore important differences that between contract faculty and P&A lecturers and teaching specialists. As a lot of people know, contract faculty have 3 levels of promotion. P&A teaching specialists and lecturers have 2, and that doesn't really line up. There's differences in salary, sometimes access to professional development, unit governance. So our committee has really been exploring kind of what's happening with that and ways to address that. We've met with, a few of us have met with Human Resources and also Catherine Dowd, the chair of TFABs, to kind of, because Catherine and her committee and TFABs have done a tremendous amount of work in this area already. So we're collaborating with them to move forward on some of the ongoing issues related to this. We're also doing some work around part-time instructors, those who are non-benefits eligible, often teaching 1 course a semester on contract. Oftentimes, part-time instructors lose access to email over the summer, so they're not able to communicate with students and get access to Canvas to prepare their courses. So we are working on a way to try to see if we can get them access or ways to kind of address that. And also looking at monitoring more if we have part-time instructors working in multiple colleges to make sure that we're adhering to guidelines in regards to being benefits eligible. We've also done work on workload distribution in trying to figure out ways to make teaching assignments, service loads more equitable. I did a workload pilot project with 6 departments this last spring semester to work with them in looking at are there inequities in how services is assigned and teaching is assigned. And it was also a learning experience for me as well. And we're planning to create toolkits and things that department chairs can use to help with equitable distribution of work and having dashboards about that and having clear minimum standards of where that should be at. So those are just a couple of the things that we've been working on this spring semester. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lovie Pezik from OHR to provide an update on CS&P and Administrative Staff Success Work Group.
Thanks, Beth. Hi, everyone. Excited to be able to offer some updates on what the committee I've been chairing has been putting together. So several preliminary recommendations that stand out, these kind of touch on the work with flexibility, reclassification process, as well as managing workloads. And you'll see that these recommendations speak to each of those and certainly some of the opportunities we saw to blend and integrate these focus areas. And so the first recommendation I wanted to emphasize is looking at training opportunities as well as existing practices, in particular our new supervisor orientation as opportunities to really enhance supervisory skill sets and competencies, including in areas such as managing employee workloads, understanding what your options are as a supervisor to support additional pay for when employees are taking on substantial increase in work, as well as managing flexible and remote hybrid workers. And so that's our first recommendation that we've been focusing on at this point. Separately, but related certainly, is looking at creating a reclassification training deck and relevant materials to really help, again, especially our supervisory audience to kind of understand more about that process. And that is something specifically we thought we could also present and discuss annually, in particular to audiences such as this and to our civil service and P&A groups, Senate groups. On a related note, we've been discussing and generating ideas around how to enhance our existing work with flexibility guidance. So elaborating, clarifying, and expanding the guidance for supervisors, especially as it comes to both managing workers and teams and understanding what's in their sphere of decision making as a supervisor versus what can often be more policy driven, and certainly the legally bound practices around managing a flexible work arrangement. And so this could include, whether it's policies around state related, working out of state, travel, et cetera. And so we're really looking at how to take the best of that guidance and certainly what we've learned lessons so far and really expanding that to support our supervisors and units who are overseeing a lot of that. With that, I believe that completes our updates at this time.
We do have a few minutes for questions, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you. With that, Jen, you were beginning to lead this, but I could certainly list, start off with questions here if you prefer, or would you like to do it?
Oh, I think you as chair are totally fine, or whatever you would prefer.
That's fine. We'll start them with Scott. Your question.
Thank you. P&A Senator, I am wondering, so in 2022, it was reported to the regents that P&A and civil service comp ratios were 11 points under market overall, and some particular job families like marketing and communication were 17.5 points below. So with that said, that was 3 years ago. So based on your plan, where are we today, and how has your plan for implementation improved those comp ratios and brought closer to market those staff?
Well, I can speak to it, and then maybe I'll let Mary speak to it. Scott, you are right. After our market refinement, we do have job families that are lower to market. And that is currently addressed through the budgeting process by each of the units that have those employees in them. We also provide guidance, assistance, direction, and consultation on how to do that year over year. But it is a significant challenge to get there. And I can't state that we have the resources right now to bring everyone to market media, nor is that, I think, the university's strategy that everyone needs to be there. People are at different stages of their work. Many should be there. Some should be above it. Some should be given where they are in their career, probably a little earlier on below it. So we continue to work on that. We think some of the floor decisions that are in this response to the resolution address that, but there is more work to be done, as I said, as we go forward year over year.
Follow up to that. Are you saying what you just described is that the university's essentially okay with faculty being closer to market while sacrificing P&A staff at a lower market? Is that what you're describing?
No, that's not what I'm saying. That may be your perspective looking at it, but we do not look at it that way. What we look at in regard to faculty is area of study and rank. And what we look at with P&A is not overall P&A, but specific job families and how that work benchmarks to the market. And we will always have some areas we need to address as critical. We'll always have some areas that are fine to market. Every refinement we do, whether it's been faculty or staff, is not consistently below market for the entire job family. You mentioned marketing communications. That is one that is significantly below market. I think we've acknowledged that, and I think we are taking actions currently to address that, although they are gradual and it won't be overnight.
Thank you. Terry?
Yeah, thanks. I also have a question about pay, but mine is a little narrower in focus. I'm curious whether there have been any discussions about a floor for per course salaries or payments. I know that there are PNA instructors in the College of Liberal Arts and CEHD that make as little as $6,000 per course. That's not a living wage. It's really, they teach a lot of student credit hours. They're excellent teachers. And what are we going to do to, beef up their salaries?
Terry, thank you for that question. And I'm going to refer that to Mary Roman Cool because she has worked with a team that has done some initial work on the tails of the TFAP's recommendations that we could initially share with you. We can't probably get into all of it today, but Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, we're ready. We have been asking the same question, and our team, I'll just say we've gone out and found a way to pull in market data for this population, and not just for the floor, but perhaps even like market median. So we want to solve that. We see that as one of the next things, and we're close. We do need to take it around. We just showed it to Ken last week. Now we'll go to Provost Croson and others next week, and maybe, I don't know, Catherine Dowd and others. We kind of got to get our tour together, but make that really quickly. And then, as we mentioned, one of the first priorities we have for the workforce reinvestment items is the floor and that teaching, per credit payment for teaching specialists, lecturers. And we can then look at how that affects other pay rates. But we've got a really nice solution. And I think you have hit on something, which is there's one thing to put a floor in place, but when people convert it to a credit basis, how do you measure credit? What's the unit of measurement? How that gets done makes it really hard to tell if the person's being paid competitively or not. And we've got a calculator we've put in place. It's really simple to use, and it converts these numbers into a per credit payment or a stipend amount. And I think it's going to be a really positive thing. We're coming. We're coming as quickly as we can. We care about it a lot.
I just have one quick, this is a comment, not a question.
Yeah.
I understand human resources, you're always looking at the competitive market rate. But what happens when the competitive market rate is a starvation wage, right? So I think that that there needs to be some serious discussion about pay levels and to make sure that all who work at this university earn a living wage.
Well, and I may just say, on a final note is all of our compensation work has been very collaborative. If you look at the staff work and the current faculty work at some of the system campuses, and this will be no different. And we are working closely with Catherine Dowd and her group. And as Mary said, we'll be out to talk to others. We're just in the initial stages coming out of those recommendations, but we do want to hear those voices, Terry. So thank you. Deidre.
Deirdre.
Thank you all for the work that you're doing. I really impressed to hear everything you've been doing. And it was a lot of information to take in really quickly. I'm wondering if there will be anything shared out with the Senate office to pass on to us of sort of summaries of what you shared today. So we have some time to sort of process those. And if we have follow-up questions, where we might go with those. Because I think there's a lot there, but I know I certainly did not capture and digest all of what you shared today.
Well, that's a very reasonable request. And this was done, and I appreciate it so much as an alternative to going to maybe, I don't know, a half dozen different committees in the month of April. So we typically would share some of our talking points. As we said, this still needs to go to the sponsors of the effort and to the president, and there are budget decisions to make. So I do want to offer that caveat, but we can provide some of the points we've provided here so you can reflect on them and give us your feedback. We would appreciate that.
Great. Any other last questions? Okay, seeing none, I want to thank Vice President Horstman, as well as the whole team that's working on this, and just reiterate that, this is a priority for me and my administration. We recognize that there's more work to be done here for fair wage and for market value. and to really support our full workforce. And so this remains, I'm grateful for the good work that was done on this before I came, and it's continued to be a priority with my team and will continue to be a priority with my team going forward. It's really important. Thank you so much for coming today. Item 12 is the Provost's report. Provost Croson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Cunningham. Earlier today, you met Vice Provost Greg Sneed, who's now leading our admissions function. As you probably know, the deadline for incoming students to commit to a university is May 1st. But I'm happy to report that at least so far, the University of Minnesota Twin Cities is ahead versus last year on confirmations for in-state, for out-of-state, and for international students. Of course, our enrollment numbers won't be official until Census Day, which is the 10th day of classes next semester, but our fingers are crossed, and so far, so good. And then, of course, on the other end of the student lifespan, we are excitedly looking forward to our commencement season, which is coming up in May. I know many of you and your colleagues will participate in commencements, and I want to encourage you and encourage your colleagues to do that. When the graduating students and their families see the faculty that they have or the staff that they've interacted with, that always makes it a tremendously meaningful experience for them. So I will be at many commencements, and I know that you will too. The Twin Cities and the Rochester campuses will be visited by the Higher Learning Commission next fall for our 10-year reaccreditation. Materials are due September 1st. The visit is scheduled September 29 through 30. We've had a number of committees working all this academic year, but later, maybe this spring, but certainly early fall, we'll be reaching out to various folks to meet with the campus visitors. And so please keep an eye out for that. And again, encourage your colleagues to meet with our accreditation team when they visit. As I'm sure President Cunningham will mention, we are all continuing to navigate challenge out of Washington, D.C. I want to encourage everybody to check the Rapid Response website regularly. It gets updated periodically, and to encourage your colleagues to go and look there too. There are always questions. There's news coming out every day, and we're all working as quickly as we can to update, to make decisions internally, to update that website, to make plans moving forward. Professor Blair mentioned the flat budgets at the state. So we are also in the midst of budget season where we, the Budget 6 committee, of which I am one, meets with all of the academic units this spring. We talk about what their budget's going to look like. We figure out what their reallocations are going to look like. That process is continuing with the hope of being able to propose a budget to the Board of Regents in the summer. And then finally, as Professor Goodenough mentioned, I'm going to be stepping down from the provost position as of July 1. So this is my last official update. I want to thank Jen for her kind words, but all of you for an amazing and impactful 5 years. As was mentioned, I started just as the COVID crisis was starting, and I'm ending just as the DC crisis is starting up. But nonetheless, we all worked together through hard times and accomplished great things. It's been a true honor to serve in this position and to work alongside so many of you. So thank you. That concludes my remarks, and I have a couple of questions that got submitted in advance, if that's all right, President Cunningham.
Yes, please proceed.
Great, thank you. So the first question comes from Advait, who is a student senator, and he says, the new core curriculum was not approved by Faculty Senate, but received support from the undergrad student government. Is there a way to have some students or voting members from undergrad student government discuss their thoughts on the new curriculum with faculty so they can share the student input? So thank you for your question. Like you, I was disappointed by the rejection of the proposed core, especially given the strong support from our students, including the undergrad student government, which you mentioned, but also the College of Liberal Arts Student Board, and many, many individual students who participated on the steering committee or who formally or informally gave us input into the design and suggested how we might implement the new curriculum. I'll admit I was confused by the presentation at that meeting, which seemed to me to misrepresent the vote of the CLA Assembly. That vote was described as deeply divided, with 50% in favor, 40% against, and 10% abstaining. But as I looked to the number of votes cast, my calculations showed 54% in favor, 35% against, and 11% abstaining. So I might describe that as strong support. It was 19 percentage points in favor, rather than deeply divided. The CLA Associate Dean for Undergrad Education and the CLA Office of Undergraduate Education also strongly supported the proposal, as they saw benefits to CLA undergrads and CLA more generally. I'm also concerned about the potential downstream consequences of that vote. For example, as I mentioned, our HLC accreditation is this September, and one of the criteria on which will be judged is whether, and I quote here, the institution improves its curriculum based on periodic program review. I worry that there's a very real risk that after 30 years of no major revisions and 2 failed attempts, there will be questions raised about whether we satisfy that criteria for a core curriculum. I fully understand the argument that instructors innovate the content of their individual classes, but innovating a class is different than innovating a curriculum. I continue to worry about the demographic cliff, and that having curriculum that is dated relative to our peers will only reduce the attractiveness of our campus to the next generation of students. And finally, I thought that the proposed curriculum was good. The committee did amazing work over the last 3 years. As you've seen, they consulted with many, many constituent groups. They adjusted the proposal based on the concerns that were raised. I thought the ultimate proposal was truly excellent. I worry deeply about asking a new provost arriving in the midst of a current crisis to attempt a 3rd revision of the core, especially when that process has twice failed. Are we setting them up for an impossible task? I'm scheduled to present an update on the core curriculum to the Board of Regents on Thursday, May 8th. I had hoped to be able to unveil our new and exciting innovations. Reporting a 2nd failed attempt will inevitably lead them to wonder whether our process for curriculum revision is dysfunctional. And honestly, I'm wondering that myself after this experience. I'll finally say, if we are to remain with the current core, we'll need to take some actions next year that we had not anticipated. The funds I had set aside for supporting new course development and PhD students, $500,000 recurring and $5 million non-recurring, will be redirected toward other needs. We've fallen behind in recertifying courses that count toward the core, and in anticipation that there would be a new curriculum in place. So that process will need to be restarted and accelerated. And as you may know, we are out of compliance with our current curriculum in allowing P&A instructors to teach core courses without going through the required exception process. And that will need to be corrected next year as well. I'm sure I have over-answered your question, but I did want to express my concerns as well as the one you raised, which was the perceived prioritization of faculty interests over student interests. So the second question that came in was from Bob Goldstein, a faculty senator, also about the core. In the last Senate meeting, the core curriculum proposal was voted down. This was the 2nd failed attempt to get a university-wide core curriculum approved. Given that students in our colleges have diverse needs and characteristics, what if every college designed a general education curriculum explicitly tailored to its own students? Of course, colleges could choose to maintain the current curriculum if that's what they believe is optimal. Furthermore, they can decide whether to accept the curriculum from other colleges for transfer students. Can you please share your thoughts about this suggestion? Well, this is certainly possible, and it's within the authority of Faculty Senate. It does feel to me like this would be moving backwards. Prior to 1991, each college did have its own curriculum, but in the Howe report in 91, the faculty stood strongly behind the principle that general education for all students should be the same, no matter what their major or their college. I will add, I'm personally not in favor of each unit having its own curriculum. And one of the things that I think there's pedagogical value in a Common Core. And one of the things I especially liked about this particular proposal was the opportunity for students who chose different majors but share similar interests to interact with each other across disciplinary boundaries via the focus area and the synthesis course. That would be lost if each college had its own core. We would also need to ensure that each college's core curriculum satisfied the Minnesota transfer curriculum rather than ensuring that centrally, but of course that's doable. While we shouldn't make these decisions based on budgetary consequences, I do want to be clear that devolving to a collegiate specific core would have very significant budget repercussions. In particular, significant reductions in the student credit hours taught by CLA, as colleges could decide to require their own courses where they had previously required CLA courses. So those were the two questions that I had submitted in advance. And with that, I'll turn it over to President Cunningham or Amber to moderate the questions.
I think we have time for one hand, and it is yours, Michael. Good afternoon.
Hi, Provost Croson. Excuse me, sorry. So I have a question about the institutional speech policy, or the implementation, I should say. So on April 3rd, we had a Zoom meeting with 12 affected unit heads who run units that study social conflict, inequality, and mass violence. All 12 unit heads were heads of departments where groups of individual members made statements. And these statements were censored by you and the 4 faculty serving on the advisory group on institutional speech. These unit heads stated in the meeting that their colleagues' statements that were censored were instances of them conveying their expertise to the public in ways that all units routinely do under the banner of outreach and engagement, which is a full third of the university mission. In this meeting, you conceded to the group of 12 that neither you nor the committee considered any contextual information, including faculty CVs, mission statements, 712 statements, past statements on issues of public concern, program descriptions, and the like, to determine whether or not these statements reflected the communication of research expertise to the public. And if it is covered, if these statements are covered under research expertise, it would then legally be covered under academic freedom policy and not institutional speech as part of our outreach and engagement missions. And I will also add that these statements all had disclaimers disclaiming institutional speech, were attributed to individuals, and thus did not fall under the Regent's resolution on institutional speech. So I have a 2-part question. One is, do you regret that neither you nor the committee, the advisory group, reviewed any of our academic credentials and areas of expertise in determining that these statements were not reflections of our research? And the second question is, what will you do to ensure due process is maintained in any decisions about the boundaries of institutional speech and speech legally protected under our policy of academic freedom?
Thank you for the question, Michael. So as we evaluated the statements that were up, our evaluation was exactly aimed at that question. Does this statement convey the research of faculty in the units, or is it a statement doing something else? For example, standing in solidarity or expressing a viewpoint that was not based in the research that was done by the faculty in the units. And our evaluation for the 11 statements that were removed was that they did not. I am happy to see statements that convey the expertise and the research of our faculty to the public. And I've seen many of those since that event, and all of those that I have reviewed so far have been approved.
I guess, but question number one is, do you regret not considering the contextual information, CVs, mission statements, and the like to determine whether or not they were reflections of expertise?
So Michael, I appreciate the question and the 2-part question, and the provost has answered, and we are well over time now. And so we're going to move on, but thank you so much. So I will move now, and I know we have a busy schedule with an extra session added in, and so we will continue to move forward. So item 14, if I can pull it up here properly and quickly, is my report. And so first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that it has been a complicated a semester in many ways for many people, and to offer both my sympathy and empathy to the community at large during this time. We are operating all in a time of tremendous uncertainty, and managing that daily uncertainty and ambiguity is a challenge for many, and a time that deserves both our kindness and our support of each other. We have a rapidly evolving federal landscape coupled with potential changes in state funding. Those were mentioned, I think, at the top of the hour of the meeting. While we continue to advocate for increased state funding, we very likely will land this year with a 0 increase to our state funding, which will be a 3% cut for us by inflation. The combination of the federal changes with those potential state funding changes have led to increased anxiety and fear among many members of our university community as we all look to try to navigate this time together. The broader pressures faced by higher eds currently have also created significant challenges for colleges and universities across the country, and certainly our institution is not immune. Together, I'd like to thank all of you for your support, your leadership, and we'll ask both thank you for your current resilience, as well as ask for your future resilience as we navigate these complex times together. My leadership team and I have been actively preparing for a wide range of financial scenarios with a shared commitment to stewarding our mission, our values, our goals, and what it means to be a higher ed institution wisely. It is not in our best interest to have a draconian reductions to finances based on speculation. There certainly have been other institutions for a variety of reasons that have had to implement financial austerity. And I am committed to having a steady approach and not making reductions, again, based on speculation. There is, however, a strong possibility that a time may come where we may need to look at such reductions in austerity, spending cuts, or other austerity measures, depending on what comes down the pike at us. And as a university, we want to be as prepared as possible for that. So at this time, I am not enacting any pauses in hiring, spending, or other actions as other universities have done. However, we are asking all of you and our leaders to take a prudent approach in your posting of new positions, hiring of current open positions, and other spending. If at some point we need to adjust this guidance to be more clear from us or consider other fiscal actions, I'll certainly consult with members of our university community to take the greatest extent possible. In the meantime, I look for the local knowledge, both at the faculty level and at the school level, to make prudent decisions. Now more than ever, we're called to take this measured and thoughtful approach to fiscal spending and to planning. While I cannot predict what tomorrow will bring, we do know our university is on solid footing now, even with the state budget forecast coming down, and we will manage through this. But intentional planning, stewardship, and preparation now will help ensure that we remain financially strong. I want to move to just a moment again of focusing on our international students and scholars here at the university. I have said this many times this spring, but it is certainly worth repeating today. We are a global university, and our international students and scholars are a core component of our identity and our excellence. They always have been and always will be an essential part of our university community, and I am personally committed to that. That said, we are aware of 11 students who have had their Student and Exchange Visitor Information System (SEVIS) records terminated. Our colleagues at International Student and Scholar Services are continuously monitoring that database and will continue to reach out and contact any member of our university community who has had their record terminated, and to offer support and resources as they have been doing. ISSS office recently hosted a webinar based on input from our graduate students and broader community that this was needed, with local immigration attorneys so that they could provide our community with more information about the current environment. I believe over 500 people attended that webinar. The attorneys also offered practical tips and answered questions from students and scholars. University leaders may receive requests for more information about individuals who are impacted by changes to their immigration status. And while this curiosity no doubt stems from a desire to help, I and the university cannot and will not proactively share individual student information which is private. If you receive these types of questions, please inform them that ISSS, Student Legal Services, and others are working to share services and support. I do understand how distressing these developments are for the members of our university community and the generalized fear and anxiety that is prevalent in the community right now. And again, know that the university will not waver in our support of international students and scholars. I'd like to provide a brief update on system-wide strategic planning, our Maroon, Gold, and Bold plan. We've had tremendous engagement with many thanks across the 5 campuses, with thousands of faculty, staff, and students leading into that planning process. Our system-wide survey generated over 8,000 responses. And together we've hosted more than 100 town halls and received input from 3,600 members of our community during those times. Based on the initial feedback we received, I'm pleased to report that many of the emerging themes align very nicely with our mission of teaching, research, and outreach. We will look forward to even more engagement with our community in coming months so that we'll collectively source additional bold initiatives that would fit into then these emerging themes. Chancellor Nees and Dean Aline, co-chairs from the Maroon, Bold, and Gold, will be presenting more updates on strategic-wide planning at the May 9th Board of Regents meeting. I'll remind people here that it will simply be a progress update and a discussion and a summary of what we have heard to date, not any absolute or final decisions on system-wide strategic planning. I also want to remind the community that in this time, we are looking to do strategic planning. And while there will be many, many great programs and components and objectives worked on across the university, as any comprehensive research university does, we are looking during this time to provide strategic planning to really help us guide investments to move forward and leap in a large way moving forward. And so with that, obviously, if you are going to be strategic in planning, it will not be what everybody's hopes and dreams are during that time. Instead, we will work to hear the themes that have come up and work to make plans underneath them, knowing that there is much other good work going on. I want to add my thoughts both to the provost and to Professor Goodnows on this season of commencement and student success. I'll close out my president's report by recognizing really just our tremendous students who are graduating this semester. I am honored to be here to complete this year, my first year with you as you move towards your commencement and this part of your journey. More than 13,000 students across our 5 campuses will earn a degree from the University of Minnesota next month, which is completely remarkable. I had an opportunity to engage with some of them last night in our annual Student Leadership and Student Awards reception. About 100 from our Twin Cities campus were honored for their exceptional leadership and service. And I was struck by their commitment to excellence, not only in the classroom, but also in the community. The impact is palpable. Their work and their journeys are just completely inspiring. And together, they truly define what makes the University of Minnesota such a special place. I'm confident that they will have a profound impact on our society long after they graduate and reflect tremendously well on the University of Minnesota for decades to come. So as we prepare for commencement season, it's important for us all to recognize the invaluable role that our faculty and staff play in helping these students earn their degree. I'm deeply appreciative of their ongoing efforts to ensure that each and every one of our students is fully prepared to take on the challenges of tomorrow. So with that, I'll thank you for your time and attention, and this concludes my president's report. Item 15 is questions to the president, and I have received a few questions in advance. One of those questions comes from Sharon Jansa, which I'll summarize these for time, is a faculty senator from the College of Biological Sciences. Later today, the University Senate will hold a special meeting to consider the resolution to establish a mutual defense compact for the universities of the Big Ten Academic Alliance. Although many of us support this resolution in spirit, we have concerns about its implementation. If this resolution passes and the Senate and a mutual defense fund is established by the administration, how would it be funded? Would the cost of establishing this fund be passed to colleges and departments in the form of higher cost pools to support OGC and central administration? Would tuition dollars be used to maintain this fund? Thank you for your consideration. And so to the answer to this is, I will look for how that resolution moves forward today. There is not any clarity on how such a fund could be funded with public state dollars. I'll certainly look to presidents around the country in our other Big Ten leadership roles To the best of my knowledge, they have not yet established any such fund. But I will certainly be in contact with my peers about that. In the meantime, I always it's a good time for faculty senators, certainly to be able to have conversations about this time we were in for federal funding, and I'll appreciate learning more from them. You know, I would just add also that whether or not a fund is developed, you know, rest assured, we are working across the Big Ten and across our AAU peers every day. Our general counsels meet, our finance officers meet, the provosts meet, I meet. I will be at an AAU conference with 80 presidents this coming week. So there is much work and collaboration across the organizations. We have joined on to legal challenges across with AAU partners on a number of occasions now, when warranted in actions around federal funding. And so regardless of how this resolution goes today, you know, rest assured, we continue to work as a coalition with universities across the country on issues that affect the university. A second question comes from Ann Blaze, a faculty senator from the medical school. On behalf of the medical school faculty senate, I want to share my concerns around our clinical engagement with Fairview and practice. And it is indeed an important time for that relationship. That's my commentary, not hers. The medical school certainly does, as she notes, train 70% of doctors within the state of Minnesota at some point during their medical training. Additionally, from a research perspective, we bring millions of dollars in research grants. And for our clinical practice, they serve the Twin Cities Metro, but also quaternary care for complex care across the state of Minnesota, including organ transplantation, bone marrow transplantation, cell therapy, cancer care, along with many other specialties. Many of these are embedded within the mHealth Fairview system. And while there have been statements to collaborate with Essentia for a broader Minnesota health, those statements have, there's a question here around how that includes basically the Fairview partner, and a note by the senator that the clinical partnerships in the Twin Cities here are indeed important as they are currently embedded. That the University Hospital and CSC could not acquire all of those procedures. Therefore, the senator is interested in hearing more about an update around UMP and the medical school, with an interest in hearing more communication, and notes that 9 strategic groups met and gave feedback in February, and they are looking for more information from that partnership. And I think these are great questions. This is a really important time for our contracts, which are over with Fairview in the end of 2026. I would rest assured to the senator, we have indeed been in an assortment of conversations to try to move a next step forward since well before my time here. Where that sits right now is, I guess if I back up a moment, I'll say the proposed plan for the All Minnesota Health Solution has always included the Twin Cities partner. We hope that this partner will be Fairview. We have invited them to be that partner, and we are in ongoing negotiations with them in terms of what that could look like and or what other options are available along with our partner with Essentia. The Attorney General has become involved in those decisions and has appointed a strategic facilitator who has now begun their work. I cannot speak about those facilitated negotiations as part of our agreement with the Attorney General, but they certainly are progressing. That was the one question there. I do understand this senator's concern. We note here that Fairview is actively recruiting our faculty away, she says, and building their own specialty care services. And we do understand this. We do not believe this is good partnership on the part of our partner Fairview, and we do understand it is happening, and it is of concern to our medical school faculty, and indeed jeopardizes the future of our medical school by their actions. Where do we stand on bringing a new executive vice president for clinical affairs in? I remain engaged in that process, and it's taken a little longer than we had hoped. In the interim time that we're in, it would be an interim VP for clinical affairs. And in the time that we are in the middle of these negotiations, it's been a work in progress, but I expect to be bringing more information on that over the next few months back to the faculty. Let's see, and where do we stand with planning for the All Minnesota Healthcare Vision with the 3 partners, Essentia, Fairview, and the senator here notes St. Cloud, Centricare and St. Cloud, and how do we prepare for it? Our current proposal includes Essentia and invites Fairview into that conversation. We do have ongoing training and plans for that in Centricare, as well as expansions in Duluth. Both of those are in jeopardy unless we stabilize our current healthcare partner situation in our ongoing contracts. And so I would reassure the senator that we are working diligently also day and night on the resolution of this difficult and very important issue across our health sciences. And so with that, I have maybe a few minutes. Okay, I can take a question or two. Eric, good afternoon.
Thank you, and good afternoon, President Cunningham. The American Association of Colleges and Universities has issued a call for constructive engagement, in part speaking against government overreach and political interference. The letter was signed by the presidents or chancellors of Wisconsin, Madison, University of Washington, Northwestern, University of Maryland, University of Michigan, UCLA, University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And here in Minnesota, the presidents of Bemidji State, St. Paul College, Augsburg, Carleton, Gustavus, McAllister, and St. Thomas have signed. So I wanted to ask if you intend to sign the statement, and more broadly, you're thinking about it.
Yeah. And I became aware of this statement, I think somewhere late yesterday afternoon, and I'm still looking at it and under consideration. You know, I would give you a broader sort of reflection on my view on statements, which you may be gathering now as I work with you folks over the year more broadly, which is when I evaluate a statement like this that comes across, I like to understand what I think the impact of it will be. I don't, you will not tend to see me making statements first of all, just to join on because other people are making them, but more thinking about them, whether they are a reflection of thinking together or whether they really will be action. You know, I would like the University of Minnesota broadly, I will tend to be focused on ways that I can communicate with you and the broader community on actions we're taking, and how we communicate our values through our actions and through our experience, and less through signaling on statements. And that's generally the way that I work. It doesn't mean I don't respect the people that are signing them, and it doesn't mean I agree or disagree with the current statement. You know, I'll say, Eric, broadly, this comes from some of my time. Some of you know I did injury prevention research, and I did gun violence research for several decades. And there was a time where it was very popular to put out statements about events. And those broadly became seen as sort of thoughts and prayers. During that time, I was working actively on actions and signaling what the actions were we could do to actually support the people who were being most impacted. And so that's a general part of my leadership style. Again, I wouldn't take that to mean or not mean an opinion about a particular statement at a time, but I tend to evaluate statements with the view of how will this impact our community? Does it signal what our actual actions are? You know, it doesn't mean that there isn't a reason, and I know the senators are taking up statement thoughts today. It doesn't mean that I certainly disapprove of others doing that, but that's where I land. That's where I tend to see my leadership. I think this is reflected a little bit last year in the, you know, we put out a president's note last July or August, that generally you wouldn't see me making statements on broad events. Instead, I will be focusing on what we are doing here at the University of Minnesota, the great work that we're doing here, and our values and mission. And then collectively, we will be judged by what we do here at Minnesota and how we uphold our values and our mission by our actions. I have 1 minute left for a question, so I believe that is you, Nathan.
Yeah, thank you, President Cunningham. I appreciated your words in support of our international students. So I just wanted to ask a very kind of straightforward question. Are you currently a member of the President's Alliance on Higher Education and Immigration? And given that the website for that group is locked so that membership can't be viewed, if you are a member, will you be announcing that to the university community?
I believe we are and have been a member of that for a long time. So I think that's the answer. I think the last time that somebody looked at membership, it was like there's been a lot of transition here, and so the names kind of weren't updated. But I believe the University of Minnesota. I haven't looked at the history for how long we've been part of that association, but we've been part of that association for some time. I have not changed that. So yeah. And I think with that, my time is up. I appreciate the thoughtful questions from the community. And also just want to, again, pass on my sincere regard for the uncertainty of this time and how difficult that is for people, and the real impacts that as we navigate these changes are having on faculty and their funding and their students and their postdocs and their junior faculty, and look for ways that we can continue to try to support people towards our mission moving forward. Okay, with that, item 16 concerns recipients of the Vicki R. Courtney Award for Outstanding Service to the University Senate Governance. Professor Patterson, please go ahead.
Thank you, President Cunningham. I'm very pleased to be announcing the recipients of the Vicki R. Courtney Award for Outstanding Service to the University Senate. It's named for the former long-term director of the University Senate and her leadership, commitment, and collaboration in governance. I was fortunate in my number of years on FCC and as FCC chair to work with her closely, so I'm very pleased that as the Senate clerk, I chair the awards committee. We went through a number of nominations very carefully, and this recognition announces faculty, students, academic, professional, administrative staff, and civil service system-wide who have made a significant impact on University Senate governance. Awards receive a one-time $1,000 stipend and engraved plaque. This year, we did not get a P&A nomination. We encourage people to do that in the future and nominate in all those categories. And I'm very pleased to be announcing the 3 recipients this year. The student award is Taiwo Arimo. The faculty award is to Timothy Johnson, and the civil service award is to Stacy Maher. I'd love to say more about them, but we're a little tight on time. They all do great service to our university. They're a little familiar here. If people might be willing to turn on your Zoom and unmute and give applause for the recipients, that would be great.
Yeah, a little unmuting there. Yeah, and congratulations. I've gotten to know a few of you personally and have just been so impressed by your service and commitment to the university. So thank you all for your doing, and congratulations for this tremendous award today. Okay, let's see. Not labeled. Okay, item 17 concerns old business, and there's no old business for the University Senate. The next item concerns new business for the University Senate. Please note that any new business for the Senate will be referred to committee unless special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting and present. Is there any new business? If there is no further business, this concludes our meeting. Seeing no further business, we are adjourned. The special meeting of the University Senate will commence at 3:55, chaired by Professor Leo. And so that adjourns us. Thank you all for your time today.
All right, I think we're ready to go. So I now call the special meeting of the University Senate to order. Item 2 concerns a resolution to establish a mutual defense compact between the BTAA institutions. Professor Ganeshananthan will introduce this item. Professor Ganeshananthan, please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. So it's my privilege today to present this resolution, which offers us a powerful opportunity to act in support of our mission, our community of educators, and most of all, students. The 58 co-sponsors of this resolution have already heard widespread interest and excitement about this initiative from faculty, from staff, students, and others. Some of you may even have heard Rachel Maddow mention this on a recent episode of her show. And her advice and ours is to act fast. Since you've received links to the full text of the resolution, I'll speak for just about 5 minutes to highlight its main points so that we can hear from others who'd like to share their views. So why are we bringing this to you today? In what ways would the resolution empower us, and what does it ask of us? In late March, the University Senate at Rutgers passed the resolution to establish a mutual defense compact for the universities of the Big Ten Academic Alliance in defense of academic freedom, institutional integrity, and the research enterprise, the Rutgers Resolution for short. It calls for schools of the Big Ten Alliance to regard, quote, the preservation of one institution's integrity as the concern of all. In light of recent assault on academia by the Trump administration and aligned political actors, that also is a quote from the resolution, assaults which have imperiled our research, our classrooms, our freedoms, and which represent really an existential threat to the pursuit of knowledge, truth, and education in the US, we want our university leadership to fight for us. The resolution provides a clear path for the administration to do so. This moment demands not only a sharp re-articulation of our own values, but also that we name the challenge we face and act to address it. An infringement against one member university of the Big Ten, the Rutgers resolution says, shall be considered an infringement against all. You may hear in that phrasing the echoes of others who have written and said that we must all hang together so that we do not all hang separately. The resolution specifically calls for participating institutions to commit meaningful funding to a shared or distributed defense fund. This fund, the resolution says, shall be used to provide immediate and strategic support to any member institution under direct political or legal infringement. The resolution also calls on participating institutions to pool resources, the services of their legal counsel, governance experts, and public affairs offices to coordinate a unified and vigorous response, including but not limited to legal representation, countersuit actions, strategic public communication, amicus briefs and expert testimony, legislative advocacy and coalition building, and related topical research as needed. To design the mechanisms through which we will collaborate will take a concentrated effort from the leadership of these universities, an effort that will be well worth it. The financial details do need to be worked out, but the costs of inaction are becoming devastatingly clear. We urge our administration to make us part of this important national strategy. A mutual defense compact of the kind proposed by Rutgers would create a formidable pool of resources for any Big Ten university facing an attack from the Trump administration. This is a chance, I think the best that has emerged yet, for us to undertake substantive and common sense action to protect our campuses, students, and mission in principled solidarity with peer institutions. Of the 18 universities who would be in this coalition, 16 are public. I have admired the recent efforts of private institutions like Harvard, Princeton, Wesleyan, where administrators are taking action to defend their institutions, but public universities that serve the common good must also rise to the occasion. Since it first passed at Rutgers not even a month ago, the resolution has gained huge momentum. At least 5 schools have already passed it. In addition to Rutgers, of course, Indiana University, the University of Michigan, Michigan State, and the University of Nebraska. At Michigan, it passed early this week with a staggering 92.8% of the vote. And at least 4 more schools are considering this: the University of Southern California, the University of Wisconsin, Ohio State, and of course, us. We should join these schools. It is a matter of urgency for our students who are watching us closely now to see what we will do and who deserve our best support. It is also something we can do in service of the public good. Our institutions are a vital public resource. It is no longer sufficient to define our values. We must empower the defense of the spaces in which they exist, in which we do research and disseminate knowledge. These are spaces that now face terrible danger, including, but certainly not limited to, multiple investigations, threats to funding, threats to members of our international community, government overreach. Last night, as I was thinking through what I would say today, I saw that the Trump administration had issued 2 new executive orders pertaining to universities. It's clear that every moment we wait leaves us less equipped to respond. We intend this resolution as a statement of support for our administration, which we urge to take decisive action in this new federal environment. Members of the Trump administration have said plainly that they wish to destroy universities. If the past 94 days are any indication, we must move swiftly to protect the institutions that we hold dear and that are a vital part of protecting our society's present and future. This is a resolution that, beyond performative and obvious statements about the value of higher education, calls on university administrations to make material and meaningful commitments to the safety and sustainability of our communities, without which we cannot pursue our fundamental mission, education, and of course, truth. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Unmute. We will now proceed to debate. Please raise your hand to be recognized to speak and send a chat to Amber Bathke indicating whether your comment is pro or con. When you are called on, please introduce yourself and indicate which unit you represent. As a reminder, non-senators must be yielded time by a senator in order to speak. Amber, please call on the first speaker.
All right, the first person is Aaron Corfield.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aaron Corfield. I'm a senator from the medical school. Before us is a resolution that affirms to the university community, state, and country that academia and the University of Minnesota will be steadfast in its mission to create scholars from all walks of life. Our colleagues at peer institutions have already begun to sign this resolution in the face of broad executive overreach into higher education. Trainees at the medical school are already feeling the effects of this administration. International residents and fellows are nervous about being readmitted to the United States if they have to leave this country for any reason. They are skilled, and they have sacrificed much of their adult lives for the betterment of others, especially in this country. All of this together still does not guarantee them due process if they were detained at the border. With every school that joins this resolution, I see acts of bravery in what amount to a hostile takeover of higher education. I see our colleagues across the country standing up for democratic principles, the rule of law, and for those who cannot speak because they need to remain invisible for their safety. Being part of the medical school, we're tasked with helping people who are sometimes at their most vulnerable times in their life. I speak now for those people who care for you and they care for your loved ones in our clinics and in our hospitals. And some of them now are at their most vulnerable time that they've ever experienced in their life and in their training here at the University of Minnesota. I strongly urge my colleagues to vote for this resolution. Thank you very much.
All right, we've got a whole lot of pros in the queue, so I'm going to go next with Stacy Marr, who has a neutral comment.
Thanks, Amber. And it's tough to follow such great words from my Senate colleague here, but I am Stacy Maher. I'm an administrative director and University Senator, Civil Service. Why my position is neutral today is because while there are 50-some sign-ons to this resolution and the work, I'm not here to judge today. What I am here to express concern about is the lack of formal consultative process, because when I review the civil service senators and the P&A senators and the student senators, I don't see any leadership that's involved in this, nor as a leader of Civil Service Senate was I invited to even entertain this through my body. It's really tiresome and frustrating to feel like I, as a civil service representative, have a seat at the table, in these instances, it feels very performative because it's not considered when this work is being done to consult with the broad community in a very formal way. So I am neutral on this. I'm excited to hear what others have to say. It is very important, but I want to point out that the formal consultation was missed yet again. Thank you.
Next is Eric Schwartz. Eric Schwartz.
That helps. I'm speaking as a university senator, as a professor at the Humphrey School, and as the former dean of the school. I support this resolution. And in my support, I have to articulate not only my endorsement, but my respectful but very deep differences with President Cunningham's perspectives on symbolic expressions of leadership. We are in an unprecedented moment in world history, and we miss that reality at our peril. The institutions of democratic and civil society are under the fiercest attack, and the universities are clearly in the sight of President Trump and his henchmen. At moments like this, whether in Argentina in the 1970s, the USSR in the post-war era, or even in Nazi Germany in the late 1930s, the public silence of leaders of public institutions, leaders like each of us, and like our university president, played a role in enabling authoritarianism and widespread abuses of human rights. In fact, the entire international human rights movement, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and so many others, recognizes this simple reality that public expression on behalf of basic principles can have a key and positive impact on those who would abuse them. Gandhi said, and I quote, "Silence becomes cowardice when occasion demands speaking out the whole truth and acting accordingly." And bringing this idea to the present day, I'll quote Thurgood Marshall, who said, "Where you see wrong or inequality or injustice, speak out, because this is your country, this is your democracy. Make it, protect it, pass it on." For all of these reasons, we have to endorse this resolution.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody feels strongly about this, and as do I, but in order to get as many people to speak as possible, please try to keep your comments as short as possible. I'd appreciate that, so we can get as many in as we can. Amber?
Yep. Next, I'm going to go to Scott Creer, who has a suggestion.
Hi, I thank you for giving me the time. I just have I think what would be a friendly amendment to make this more operationally prudent if it were to be passed. And that's to shift it from funding a shared or distributed defense fund to signing on to a agreed upon legal services as an industry or as a Big Ten group. That would be more operationally prudent for the university to do that versus setting up a fund. So that's friendly amendment if it were to be accepted.
All right. My understanding is that Professor Ganathanathan has to accept it as a friendly amendment, or else we have to spend 5 minutes talking about the amendment and voting. So I will ask her to comment.
Sure. It's Ganesh Ananthan. Thank you so much, Scott, for that suggestion of the friendly amendment. I am going to reject it, as I think that makes it less meaningful, and also because it changes the content of the Big Ten Compact, which is asking us to be united in this particular strategy.
Okay, so I think in order for us to consider the amendment, it has to have a second. So do I hear a second? All right, hearing no second, we will continue with the discussion. Amber?
Get back to my list here. Next up is David Fox.
Hi, I'm a faculty senator from the College of Science and Engineering. I'm a professor in the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences, and I'm speaking in support of the resolution. The experiences of Columbia and Harvard indicate, in my opinion, that the attacks on academic freedom and independence of universities and their students, staff, and faculties are part of an effort to weaken and subjugate alternative sources of authority and power in American civil society to the executive branch of the federal government. Corporations, law firms, the media, expertise within federal agencies, and even the federal judiciary are subject to similar attacks. It is my view that the goal of these attacks is to undermine democracy and invest greater authority in the executive branch, specifically in the person of the president, contrary to the norms, traditions, and the Constitution of the United States. History makes clear that down that path lies sorrow and ruin. The University of Minnesota, already subject to 2 federal investigations, cannot avoid the attention of the executive branch and cannot withstand these attacks by acquiescing to even small demands from the Trump administration, nor will statements of principle suffice to protect our institution, because the demands that are and will be placed on us are made without respect for the principles that guide the academic mission. As with Columbia, acquiescence will only lead to more demands. Instead, we need a strong response like Harvard's that we will not accede to unreasonable and possibly unconstitutional demands or to unfounded impositions on our mission and academic freedom. However, we do not have the luxury and insulation from financial threat of Harvard's massive private endowment. Instead, our best bet is safety in numbers and a reliance on the shared principles and interests of our peer institutions in the Big Ten Academic Alliance. If the University of Minnesota tries to stand alone, we will face the machinations of the Trump administration with far fewer resources and with far greater likelihood of harm to our institution and the life's work and aspirations of so many, past, present, and future, than if we join with our peer institutions and stand together. These are extraordinary times, and they call for extraordinary measures by institutions and their leaders. I urge we adopt this resolution.
Next up, we have Ophelia Ferran.
Yeah, hello, thank you. My name is Ophelia Ferran. I'm a faculty member from CLA. About a month ago, President Cunningham wrote one of her messages saying that sticks in a bundle are unbreakable, talking about the need to be united in the face of the attacks that we are facing. And I think that this is what this compact is doing, not just making us be part of a bigger bundle, but a much stronger one. I was born in a country under military dictatorship in Spain. My parents had to leave Spain because of that military dictatorship. I have personal experience with how fragile democracy can be. And we are seriously under threat. And I second everything that has been said before by the people who support this measure. We cannot, part of the strategy of a totalitarian regime or authoritarian regime, however you want to call it, is to instill fear and terror in individuals and institutions, making them self-censor themselves and think that by holding down their head and not being seen, they might just get through. And that is not going to happen. The only way that we really are going to be able to face this onslaught against the democracy that we are so lucky to live in is by being together. And I think this is absolutely essential that we pass this resolution now.
Next is Alexander Campbell.
Hi all, I'm an undergraduate student senator from the College of Science and Engineering. I'll keep this brief. There are likely some of us in this meeting who are concerned that passing this resolution will put a sort of target on the back of the University of Minnesota. However, I say that that line of thinking is a mistake. While it is true that passing this resolution will draw attention, it will beef up exactly what the point of this resolution is: defense against the acts of the wannabe authoritarian Trump administration. Such defense will deter plans against this school and others, and also ensures that we have a significantly better chance at standing up for ourselves with the help of other Big Ten schools. Just like in the animal kingdom, a lone prey is more likely a target than a large pack. I second all that my colleagues who are in support of this resolution have said before me, and I'm eager to hear the comments from everybody else. Please, I say that you vote for this resolution.
Next is Matthew Bodie.
I just want to speak to those of you who may be on the fence. I'm strongly in support of the motion. I think I can speak for a lot of law school members who have spoken to me about this as well. I think it's really important that we speak as a Senate with as strong a unity as possible. The 92.8% percentage has been bandied about that Michigan reached, and I think speaking together, particularly with a new university president who is just going to, starting her position, we want to be as strong as possible in saying this is something we want to do. For those of you who are worried about putting a target, so to speak, as Alexander was saying, our governor is already opponent of the president. I think we already may have a target, and I think it would be foolish to think that, laying low on this issue at a time where we need to be joining together with others. This is not a political issue to me. This is a rule of law issue. This is a research issue. This is an international students issue. This is important to us as an institution, regardless of what your politics may be. So thanks.
Next up is Christina Gallup.
Hi, I am a professor at University of Minnesota Duluth and president of the faculty union at Duluth. So that's why we do not have representation on this body, and I have to ask a favor of somebody to give me time.
I'll cede time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I won't take up much of your time. I just wanted to show up today to tell you how important this is to us at the faculty at Duluth to stand with you. We have our own faculty senate. They have put this item on their May 5th agenda for their meeting, and I attend those meetings and intend to write a letter in support. And I just wanted to let you know how important this is, and we stand with you. Everything that everybody said so eloquently, I don't need to add to, but I do hope this resolution passes. Thank you so much.
Okay, next I have somebody who doesn't appear in the visual queue because she's having technical difficulties, but is Sarah Hakimiz.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hakimiz from the anthropology department. I'm not a senator, and I want to ask a senator to yield time.
I yield my time.
Thank you. So as an academic originally from Turkey, I want to make a comparison to underscore the necessity and urgency of what this resolution proposes. And I want to take you to Turkey for 2 minutes. The crackdown on academics in Turkey began in 2016 when more than 1,000 university professors took a firm stance against Erdogan government's notorious war on Kurds. These academics had signed a petition calling for peace and called themselves Academics for Peace. The first on the line in the government's academic crackdown was these very academics, Academics for Peace. Public prosecutors and university administrators launched criminal and disciplinary investigations against them. 519 Academics for Peace lost their jobs. The government passed an amendment, and this will sound familiar, to the law of higher education to prohibit academics from making statements or giving information to the press, news agencies, radio and TV channels without being an assigned authority. University administrators prepared expelled lists and submitted them to the government to appease Erdogan. When Academics for Peace were purged from universities and when making political statements was banned, many other academics supported these actions. Little did they know that they were also going to lose their jobs in the next few years. Indeed, in 2018, Erdogan's government launched mass expulsion of more than 6,000 academics and 1,500 administrative staff from 1,022 universities. So the crackdown on academia creates a climate of fear and self-censorship. Yet the more concession authoritarian leaders receive from...
Sorry, the speaker's time is up.
Okay, one second. The more we make concessions, the more they want. So I encourage this proposal to stop authoritarian leaders from their crackdowns. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody, for your comments. They were great. Seeing no more hands up, we will now proceed to the vote. Amber, please initiate the poll.
Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 139 ayes and 6 nays, that motion carries.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. This concludes the special meeting. We are adjourned. The Faculty Senate will commence at 4:25, and I will turn it back over to President Cunningham to chair that meeting. And I believe it's on the same Zoom. Is that right, Amber?
Yes, that is correct.
Amber, are you there?
Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. I will now call here. I will now call the Faculty Senate to order. Item 2 concerns administrative responses to Faculty Senate actions and is presented for information. Item 3 concerns actions on the recommendations from the Term Faculty and Academic Professionals Subcommittee. As there was very little concern regarding these items at the last meeting, we will proceed directly to vote. Amber, please initiate the poll.
Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 80 ayes and 9 nays, this motion carries.
Thank you, Amber. Item 4 is the consent agenda. The consent agenda includes routine, non-controversial items that are approved by the body with a single vote without individual discussion. Members may request to separate items for separate discussion if they have concerns. The items on the consent agenda are the minutes from the Faculty Senate meeting on April 3rd, the Morris campus calendar for 28-29, retirement of the establishing, enforcing, and waiving prerequisites policy, and revisions to the administrative policies phased retirement program, course enrollment limits, and enrolling in overlapping or back-to-back classes. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Amber, please initiate the poll.
Both options are yes.
Oh. Well, the bottom one is no. It comes through they come through separately for me so I can see them. 10 more seconds. Last call. And it shows all yes, but it was 97 yes and two nays. Motion carries.
Okay. Item 5 is approval of the Twin Cities slate of candidates for the FCC. I will invite Professor Shaw to explain the process by which these pairs were selected.
Thank you, President Cunningham. Amber, if you would share the slide set. So as Amber is pulling it up,
Is there any discussion or nominations for the board? And I do this. And then you would say if there are, please just.
thank you, Amber. Just to kind of get us up to speed, the FCC nominating subcommittee consists of all FCC members, except the chair, vice chair, and the faculty liaisons, plus immediate past voting members of the FCC. So you can see both the candidates and their affiliations. Amber, if you would go to the next slide. We have 3 open seats, and by our bylaws, we are required to nominate twice as many faculty candidates for the faculty consultative committee. And as in the past, we typically pair candidates. And the charge for the FCC, as you know, is to represent the faculty at large and not to any individual college, institute, and campus. Amber, will go to the next. We went through a very robust and rigorous process where first gaps were determined, and by gaps, it means the colleges that were either not represented at all or inadequately represented. Once the gaps were determined, it was either definite gaps or possible gaps. We seek nomination, and a wide process was used to seek nominations. So an email was sent to Twin Cities faculty, as well as targeted emails were sent to each of the definite and possible gap area colleges. we received a broad set of nominations, actually 33 nominations, both from subcommittee members and externally from other members. Amber? Then the next step was to rate and contact nominees concurrently. So the subcommittee rated all 33 nominees based on gap areas and qualifications. And concurrently, we requested and reached out to candidates to see if they would be willing to stand for elections. Finally, while this was going on, we got agreement from nominees on who would be willing to run. We discussed and determined these nominees based on gaps and those who agreed to run. We also voted anonymously to confirm college pairings. We approved candidates when there was only a single candidate from a college, and also voted anonymously when there were more than 2 candidates from the same college. So basically, we had a very open discussion in our deliberations. We had a robust and rigorous process. Diverse views were shared. Decisions were made anonymously by rating candidates and also anonymous voting. And the pairings represent a 50-50 mix of candidates nominated internally by subcommittee members and externally with other members. In terms of pairs, as you can see on your screen, it is 2 candidates from CLA, Galen Jones and Ron Krebs. The next pairing is David Reddish and Ann Parr, both from Med School, and Virginia from CEHD versus Matthew Bodie from Law. So the next step then is to determine if there would be any discussion or any nominations from the floor. If there are no nominations from the floor, are there any nominations from the floor?
And I will jump in here as well. If there is
Yes.
any discussion or nominations from the floor, I don't see any. If there's any questions, Rashtra will answer them. Seeing none, we will proceed. So thank you. A vote to finalize the pairings will be sent out to the Twin Cities Faculty Senators via the Simply Voting process at 6 p.m. today, and will close at 6 p.m. tomorrow. So please watch for that ballot.
Actually, I'm going to break in, and since we did not have any additional nominees, we can vote right now.
Oh, thank you. Okay, yeah, I'm looking at my multiple options. So you're seeing no nominees for the floor. Okay, I'll go to option B. We will proceed to a vote. The vote is for Twin Cities Faculty Senators only. And Amber, you have already initiated the poll. Thank you.
Yes, it's a little bit of a choose your own adventure sort of thing on these motions. And I do have yes and no options this time, so that's good. I'll give people another 10 seconds to vote. And last call. With 90 ayes and 5 nays, this motion carries. And so then, yes, next week we will send out the pairs to all Twin Cities tenured and tenure track faculty for the larger vote.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you, President Cunningham.
Thank you all. And Amber, I just have to be amused a moment at the yes and yes options because you are so rule following. So anyway, I appreciate that. We need humor. We all need humor these days.
That was absolutely the intent.
Yes. Moving on to item 6, the recommendations of the AF&T Task Force on Academic Freedom Protections for non-tenure track faculty. Professors Eric Van Wyck and Gopalan Nadithar will introduce this item. Please go ahead.
All right, thanks, President Cunningham. So I'm here with Gopalan, since our offices are just a couple doors away from each other today. So I'm going to share my screen if I can do that.
And as you're pulling that up, and we'll wait till you have it pulled up to start, to stay on time here, we have 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's my understanding of things. All right, yeah, so you can think of this part of the Faculty Senate agenda. We can view this as essentially the AF&T committee bringing forward the recommendations of a task force that worked under its aegis and bringing this up for a vote. Given this, we felt it was appropriate that I, as chair of that committee, sort of give the committee's view on the report and the recommendation. So I'll also note that there are some members of the task force here, so we may call on them for some questions that get asked if it's appropriate to their expertise and experience. So yeah, what we're discussing today is voting on these recommendations of the task force, right? So this has been a long process. It began in the fall of 2000 with AF&T beginning to look into these issues of academic freedom protections for non-tenure track faculty. The committee worked for about a year on this work, wrote a statement in October of 2021. The Faculty Senate overwhelmingly endorsed a resolution then in November, I believe, of 22 to move forward with this, to set up a task force to look for recommendations and remedies to these problems. AF&T endorsed this, and this was after those reports and recommendations were finished in June. So there's a number of observations and recommendations that were made, right? And the main one is that the Board of Regents policy on faculty tenure is an excellent basis for protecting academic freedom. However, it's sort of undermined by two kinds of violations. The first being that it does not treat all faculty appointments, right? So we have this P&A track on the outside of the tenure policy. And then non-tenure track appointments, those are not being done in accordance with the stipulations of the policy. Recommendations are simple: halt the violations and begin a gradual reclassification process that reaches a sort of steady state where the policy is being followed. And also create auxiliary policies for those employed as term faculty and librarians. In terms of discussion and next steps, right, the Faculty Senate adoption of this would begin a process with a particular purpose and timeline. These discussions and collaborations will have to be done with the administration in developing an essential to developing an implementation plan. AF&T should probably lead this effort, but other Senate committees, certainly like SCAFA, TFAPS, and FCC, would very much need to be involved. It's important to recognize also there are two distinct phases to this, right? There's this transition period that we need to go through until we get to this steady state where the policy is being adhered to in the right way. Right? And one thing that's really important is this should be the transition is driven by practical considerations, but our main goal is to be thinking about where we want to get to in the end. There's a collection of questions that were asked of the task force in the Q&A document that went out and through other channels. I pulled up a few of them here just to get the discussion started, and we can continue with those once we get going. But some that I wanted to highlight was this question of if this is the right time to be considering this issue, right? This is an issue of huge importance and growing importance. And this process will take a few years anyway, so I think why not? It's just best to get started on this. Is the Board of Regents involved? That's the sort of thing, or the administration. That really happens in the next phase, in the sort of implementation phase. Job codes, financial concerns, are those addressed? TFAPS has looked into this, and it's sort of a mess with job codes. They don't really correspond to faculty categorizations. And the financial implications are one that have to sort of come up from the bottom from units to understand that process. We're non-tenure track faculty consulted. Well, there's several of them, 11 on the task force itself. 6 were P&A faculty. Everyone on the task force was enthusiastic behind this. The last 3 here I'll mention real quickly, right, are how will this affect non-tenure track faculty? And the important thing here that's central to this is that this transition process really has to keep them in mind, protect their engagement, their aspirations for a career at this institution. What does it mean to be substantially involved in research or teaching? Right. The key thing here is that there's some level of autonomy in the work that someone does, right? That's what academic freedom is meant to protect. So PIs make sense in this role, lab technicians.
Eric, your 5 minutes time is up, and we gave you a little bit more here, so maybe get another sentence or so in here.
I'll get another sentence and it'll be done. Yeah, thank you. So the last thing we heard a fair amount about was TFAPs and the AF&T task force recommendations. How compatible are these? I think they are quite compatible, right? So each addresses concerns at essentially a different level. And the chairs of these groups have spoken and feel that, yeah, these together sort of provide a permanent framework for solving some of these issues that have been raised. So,
Eric,
thank you.
Thank you so much. We will now proceed to debate. Please raise your hand to be recognized and send a chat to Amber indicating whether your comment is pro or con. When you are called on, please introduce yourself and indicate which unit you represent. As a reminder, non-senators must be yielded time by a senator in order to speak. Amber, please call on the first speaker.
All right, next, or first up, we have Stacy Maharose Khan.
Hi, I am not a faculty senator, so I would ask for someone to yield their time, please.
I yield.
I'll yield.
Thank you. Thank you, President Cunningham. Hello again to my faculty friends. My name is Stacy Maher, a civil service senator and current chair of the Civil Service Consultative Committee. I want to start by applauding the work and heavy lifting of the AF&T group to formulate ideas about faculty tenure into conception. I appreciate the time they took to answer an extensive list of questions about the task force report, but please be wary of confirmation bias. Though the committee was asked about how it consulted broadly, the report fails to adhere to very important shared governance consultation practices. The Q&A document even brushes this question off. Yes, this room and Senate are composed of faculty, and to our faculty senators, please be mindful. The report before you suggests that civil service staff who do research would be included in faculty tenure, and this inclusion is without broad consultation from impacted staffing groups. I can't share if this report would be supported by the Civil Service Consultative Committee or the body because we as shared governance groups were not asked. In the Q&A, the committee points out that the consultation should happen after the fact and would be the responsibility of administrators to implement. How is that no different than writing a paper without completing the citation section? The opinions within this report are only formulated without consultation of the full impacted community. A vote being called today is an action the committee already admits was not the intention of the report itself. At the very least, I implore my faculty friends today to stand up to this report by requiring thorough and broad consultation of the potentially impacted stakeholders. Thank you.
All right, next up is Nathaniel Mills, who is pro.
Yeah, thank you. I will actually yield my time to Jerry Cohen. Is he here?
I do not see Jerry in the meeting.
Yeah, perhaps we can move along then to a next and come back.
Sure. Actually, instead, I'll yield my time to Dana Liebau.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't have my hand up. But yes, I can speak for, I was a librarian on the committee and have spoken to other librarians. We are all P&A faculty-like staff. And many of us are in support of this resolution because as librarians, our academic freedom is not as protected as it would be under the tenure code. And even if we are not brought into that by the recommendations here, it does articulate a path for policies protecting librarians' academic freedom to be strengthened, which we feel is very necessary at this moment in time.
Okay, next up is Alicia Cohen, who is Con.
Hello. Yes. There are many things I agree in this report. I think the AF&T committee has done a really nice job, and I've talked with them about identifying potential areas of allowing some of our teaching faculty, contract faculty, or to have pathways for tenure and promotion. However, I'm against the recommendation because I feel like it puts the cart before the horse. It makes broad statements that I cannot endorse or support, and I think in hindsight will do damage to our relationships with a lot of employees who do teaching and who are research professionals who might not be qualified to have a tenured job. I think it's not true that everyone who does teaching and research and or one or the other fits in our tenure code. That's why in the School of Journalism, we have had non-tenured faculty for 100 years. I'm extremely concerned about some of the language defining all people to be subject into this. And with, I also am concerned about the idea that the AF&T would kind of lead the charge on an implementation. I think that this needs a much broader implementation work. And I also feel like this is like a idealized document without a plan, and without knowing what the plan is and the consequences and working through that and bringing it to, it's difficult to know what exactly we're supporting. It would be nice to ideally tenure a lot more people at the university, but that ideal will always win. If we think about that, we have to think about what's real and attainable. And in this environment where we have all these healthcare researchers, public health researchers, et cetera, whose funding is being cut, I just feel like that for many of the people that we're trying to protect our ideals and our academic freedom, their jobs are on the line, and this is the wrong signal, the wrong time for this endorsement, and more work needs to be done on implementation first.
Do you want to respond or?
So could I respond to that question? To that comment?
Sure. If a brief response, so we have time for some other comments, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the big thing that we should always keep in mind in all these discussions is that what the Academic Freedom and Tenure Committee Task Force has pointed out is that our tenure code, or the document that describes or talks about faculty appointments, its provisions are being violated. That's the critical thing that one has to pay attention to. I think Alicia doesn't present this quite in the right way. If the policy is being violated, we have to either abandon the policy altogether, acknowledge that we've abandoned it, or rectify things so that we are following it. That is the critical thing.
On to the next question. Thank you for that comment. Amber, next person.
Okay, next up is Corey Stockwell, who is pro.
Hi there. My name's Corey Stockwell. I'm standing in for faculty rep Graham Stout, and I'm going to read a short statement by him. My name's Graham Stout, and I'm the film studies coordinator in CLA, and I'm senior lecturer in CSCL. I've held this position for 11 years. Every year I teach, mentor, and advise undergrads in the programs in studies in cinema and media culture, and grad students in moving image media and sound. In addition to my teaching, I administer both programs and work with students and community partners to promote collaborative events and long-term working relationships. I require academic freedom to teach, advise, critique, etc. Academic freedom is not a privilege to do as thou wilt. Rather, it's the basis of our ethical and professional relationships to our students, research, and place within our communities. I do not have academic freedom. I would be lying if I were to say that I never worry about the potential ramifications of what I teach and research. And whenever I work with students, colleagues, and community partners whose work speaks to the issues and realities of global significance, I question the potential fallout more each day. Despite these doubts, I and many others holding non-tenure track positions continue to work in a dedicated and ethically engaged manner without the protection of academic freedom. To do otherwise would be an abandonment of our responsibilities. I'm in favor of the recommendations of the AF&T Task Force on Academic Freedom for NTT faculty and would encourage all to vote for it. It's the least that can be done to recognize our work and dedication to the students of this university. Not do so is to agree that a growing number of the educators and researchers at the University of Minnesota are unworthy of the protection of academic freedom, relegating us to the status of second-class citizens. Thanks.
Next up is Jeremiah Mons, who is con.
In general, in fact, the resolution puts forward a lot of very valuable principles, and I think it's quite close to being an effective way to proceed. What I'm most concerned about is that there are a lot of corrections or modifications that have been made in the various responses in Q&As, et cetera. But in the end, we're not being asked to approve the Q&As. And those are all, pieces of information that will disappear from the record. They will no longer be associated with the actual principle that was the principles that were being approved. And in particular, the formulation of substantial involvement, if one goes to any dictionary about the definition of a substantial involvement, it would be interpreted by any reasonable person as meaning you're spending most of your time doing research or most of your time doing teaching. The various glosses that are provided say, oh, no, that's not what's meant. We're talking about people who have independent programs, who are supported in a certain way. We're not talking about people, in other cases. But the text actually gives very clear indications of people who are not included, right? But then given the word substantial and that connection, the only natural interpretation that can be taken is that, for example, if I have a bachelor's electrical engineer who's working with me, that person should be a faculty member, even if that's sort of not even what they would like to have happen. They would like to continue what their current arrangement is. They must become, faculty, even though that's not really an appropriate position for them to take, say, in the physics department. So I think that this statement about the word substantially is kind of critical in this, is doing a lot of lifting. And I would be happy to support this, I believe, if the text could be slightly improved to match what's being said in the Q&A.
Can I respond real quickly?
Yes, you can respond quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's certainly reasonable that there may be different interpretations of some of that text, but the Q&A was meant to clarify the intention. And in the end, it's really the units that have to make these determinations of what they think is an autonomous person that is they consider to be a faculty member. I think we'd be hard pressed to find any unit who would make a determination along those lines. So I think trying to be, as our president says, dealing with good intent and assuming good intent is a thing to do here. That this is a big important thing, and there's a lot of work yet to do. I don't think anyone's sort of proposing or thinking along the lines you are here about sort of people with a bachelor's degree as a lab technician or something becoming a faculty member. That's not at all how this should be read.
Jeremiah, did you want to answer that quickly with another question, and then we should move on?
Be updated to clarify your intent, right? Your intent, if that is your intent, why not update the recommendation to make that intent clear? Then many of us who are uncomfortable about approving that would be much more comfortable in supporting this. So the question is, why not update the document to make this more clear in the recommendation itself?
I think there's just the task force is essentially done at this point. So
I'm going to move us on, but I think the point is well noted, and it's a robust debate about it. And let's move on to the next comment.
All right, next up we have Marie Cullen, who is pro.
Thank you. I'm in favor of all the recommendations in the report, especially for the need of developing a university level policy that sets parameters for transparent evaluation and renewal, improved job security through multi-year contracts, opportunities for career advancement, and ideally pathways to transitioning from contract to the tenure track. New policies are needed, and appropriate use of term faculty category are needed because, for example, in 2 of the 3 departments in the College of Veterinary Medicine here at the University of Minnesota, specifically the Department of Veterinary Population Medicine and the Department of Veterinary Clinical Sciences, there are currently 123 total faculty, those with job codes 9401 through 9404. Of those, 85 are contract and 38 are tenure track. Some might assume that the contract faculty have been at the university for just a short time, but that's incorrect. looking just at the job class 9402 associate professors in those two departments I'm referring to, the average years at the U is the same. Specifically for the 23 contract associate professors, it's 14 years with a range of 1 to 35, and it's 15 years with a range of 74 to 42 for the 12 tenured tenure track associate professors. Assuming that this is an appropriate use of contract faculty positions because these are clinicians who will be having only short-term stints and not contribute to teaching or research is also wrong. These contract faculty are part of a clinic and hospital through which all 400 plus students and residents receive instruction and training. In summary, any and all contract faculty and P&A who contribute to the mission of research, education, and service need to be included more comprehensively in the university level policies, and the recommendations in this task force provide a way to develop such policies. We should approve the recommendations and the statements presented to us today. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll have time for 2 more questions or comments.
All right, next up is David Morse, who is Con.
There we go. Okay, David Morse, I'm a CSE, a faculty senator from CSE. I think this report contains the core of a good idea, and I'd like to be able to support it, but can't in its present form. Specifically, I support changes that encourage the expanded use of faculty titles and a tenure process for long-term employees who are repeatedly called on to lead courses and otherwise play instructional roles analogous to that of regular faculty. My concerns are basically the same as those of Jeremiah Manns. I think the language describing faculty is extraordinarily broad, and that it really does include people, a variety of people who are hired in research support roles, but who don't lead independent research efforts. This includes people hired by a variety of departments, and also, the employees of experimental research facilities, that are sometimes shared by colleges or different departments. So I'd like to make a motion. I think this has the core of a good idea, but is critically flawed. So I move that the vote be postponed until next fall, in the hopes that the task force will revise and tighten the language.
So I hear a motion on the floor. I believe we would need a second.
Second.
All right.
And then Amber, I think we would need a vote on that motion.
Yep, I've got a poll. Let's just find it. Okay, here we go. Ten more seconds if you wish to vote. And last call. With 57 in favor and 44 against, that motion carries.
So I believe with that, we will postpone the vote. Yeah. We had one more person queued up for that. Yeah. 2 more. And so I think we can still continue the comments of those 2 people just to get the debate to be robust, but the vote will be postponed.
Sounds good. Then up next would be Terry Caraway.
Well, I had kind of had my hand up because I wanted to speak in favor, but we're not voting today.
In favor.
So I'll yield my time to somebody else.
We had one more person in the queue.
The last person that I was planning to call on is Jim Cotner.
I'm Jim Cotner. I'm in College of Biological Sciences, and I'm in ecology, evolution, and behavior. So I'm against this. It seems like a bad idea to me, mostly based on the practical implications of it. Many of the researchers and teaching faculty that I have discussed this with are not interested in being in the faculty rank. Tenure requires a degree of evaluation that many of them do not want. Our tenure policy requires intellectual distinction. Various departments have more specifics in their 712 statements. Failure to achieve this level achievement results in termination.
This often is not the goal of the people in these positions. We can't afford to do this. What happens when the soft money goes away for researchers? The university will be on the hook for paying those salaries. A similar situation will occur with teaching faculty. This sounds like a great way to bankrupt a very good university.
So I appreciate everyone's robust debate on this topic that is clearly controversial and has many opinions. With that, the vote has been postponed and we will move on to item 7. Thank you both, Eric and Gopali, for presenting. Item 7 concerns approval of the Faculty Senate officers and is presented for information. Item 8 concerns revisions to administrative policies approved by the FCC and is presented for information. Item 9 concerns old business. There is no old business for the Faculty Senate. Item 10 concerns new business for the Faculty Senate. Please note that new business will refer to committee unless by special permission is granted by 2/3 of those voting and present. Is there any new business?
Chair Cunningham, if you might recognize me for a moment, I have something to share. You may have noticed in the Washington Post this morning that our expected potential vote from the special meeting on our version of the Rutgers resolution was included and mentioned in the Washington Post. I have been asked by that reporter if it passed, and it did. So you may want to watch for that in the Washington Post, as our work earlier may get mentioned. So a real-time update. So I thought I would give it. Thank you.
Thank you for the real-time update. Seeing no other new business, this will conclude our meeting. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all so much for your commitment and your work to faculty business and to the university. And I'll look forward to seeing you all at the next meeting.